I was in a discussion about a month ago with someone who is very focused on trade policy and actually very supportive of the administration's current posture on trade policy. I have some reservations in some areas, generally okay with what he's doing. But what I found interesting about this discussion with this economist, I said, he made the comment that, well, I'm not accounting for, I'm looking this purely through the lens of the aperture as a trade expert. Of course, I'm not taking into account geopolitical factors and other things that may influence, may require you to throttle back on one policy or another, because it's not just about a discrete transaction. I feel the same way here. I feel that some who may be opposed to what we're trying to do with PARA are not realizing that I'm not only trying to work on patent eligibility, but I'm also trying to counter geopolitical threats. And so that has to be a key driver for me. It can't just be about the atomic considerations within the retail industry. That's important to me, of course, and it's not lost on me how important the industry is nationally and in North Carolina, but I also have to account for future threats that could ultimately even affect the retail industry if we don't get it right, if we lose our innovation advantage. So Mr. Cohen, I want to start with you. Let's say that this just as a non-starter doesn't get done. The 800-pound gorilla is China. Tell me what the future looks like and what we stand to lose if we just allow ourselves to fall into second or third place as an innovation economy.
Well, this is the issue that keeps me up at night. And unfortunately, the data we have does not suggest that the current direction is going positively. I mean, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute did a study that showed that China was dominating in roughly 90% of all the critical technologies. ITIF here in Washington has also done a study of different sectors, which also show Chinese dominance. China is also increasingly coming to a position where they can, they're not only a follower of other countries, but they plan on making their own policies in their own interests, which is to be expected. And in areas where there are critical technologies, which China owns, which we're well aware of, like in electrical vehicle batteries, or in pharma, where China has become is an important outbound licensor. They've also taken positions that they're not going to share their technology. China is not going to replace the U.S. China is going to be its own model for the world as a dominant technological power. That may involve less sharing, at least with the developed world, and a greater focus on critical technologies. We also are in an era of decreased transparency with China, so the ability to gauge how well foreigners, particularly Americans, are being treated. I could say that after observing this for 40 years, I know less today than 5 or 10 years ago, because China aggressively curates its cases, and I can't tell you how Americans fare before the courts in China. I have my suspicions, but I really cannot tell you because the cases are not transparent. So this is a great unknown in many respects. The other and final point I'd like to make is that China believes in IP. Now, many people in the US do not, many people in Congress may not, but they view IP as of strategic importance and important to enhancing their own power and prestige and capacity to innovate and attracting talent and whatever else you can add on to that. And they've taken steps to aggressively improve their system in their own interests. And I think there's an assumption here that this is so difficult to protect IP in China. China has no IP system. Well, they have roughly 500,000 court cases each year on intellectual property, which is several multiples of the US docket. They have specialized trial courts in intellectual property and appellate courts, and they have 5-year plans on intellectual property. After all, they're a socialist economy. So they're trying to leverage that in their own interests of strategically advancing and becoming a technological superpower. And I think to get back to your question, if we're looking at 5 or 10 years out, unless we dramatically improve our capacity for oversight and evaluating China's capacity for technological improvement, it will be very difficult to see where we will land, but it will not be a good place.
I'm going to turn to Senator Schiff, I am going to ask some other questions. Senator Schiff, I actually had to leave, go break 3 ties, and come back. So, I'm going to be here for the duration, but I'll go ahead and let you ask questions, and I'll ask afterwards.